Welcome, everyone, to Become CEO of Your Finances, Workshop 4, all about identity theft and what to do when it happens to you. We're going to wait just a few minutes as people log on, so we'll be back in just a minute. Hi, everyone. I think we'll just wait a couple more seconds here, a few more people coming on. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. First of all, happy belated New Year to everyone. We are excited to welcome you to Workshop 4 of Free to Thrive's Financial Empowerment Academy, Identity Theft, What to Do When It Happens to You. My name is Susie Day, and I'm Director of Development and Survivor Empowerment Programs here at Free to Thrive. And we are honored to have you here with us today for this next hour or so on what is the last week of Human Trafficking Awareness Month. Next slide. Just a few housekeeping things before we get started. First of all, we have some incredible speakers today. And first off will be Marissa Mowry, who, sorry guys, just losing my place here. Our first speaker will be, sorry about that, will be Marissa Mowry, and she is Consumer Finance Staff Attorney at Mental Health Advocacy Services in Los Angeles. She is an alumnus of the Equal Justice Works Fellowship Program, where she spent 2 years representing survivors of human trafficking in immigration matters and as victim counsel in criminal proceedings. During Marissa's presentation, you will also have a quick introduction to Brooke Scott, Free to Thrive's case assistant, and also our incredible community partner liaison. She will quickly share a little bit about the opportunity to have some personal one-on-one assistance with your own budget. Following Marissa's presentation, we are very excited to also have Dion Sales McKinney, our incredible client liaison here at Free to Thrive, and also our special guest, Marjorie Saylor, who is a survivor leader, director of client services with Alabaster Jar Project, board president of the Survivor Leader Network here in San Diego, and also the founder and CEO of WellPath. I'm super excited for Marjorie to have the opportunity to also share with you a little bit about what she does. In their portion of the program today, they will be sharing advice, tips, tools, and inspiration for overcoming both identity theft and other credit challenges. Next slide. If you missed our last virtual trainings, you can view it, first of all, and other trainings on our website, freetothrive.org. Make sure, first of all, today during the webinar that you have selected speaker view in the top right corner of your Zoom window. If you have any technical issues, please reach out to our training coordinator, Elaine. There's her email address and phone number. Please note that all participants are muted and we cannot see you. We usually wait till the end of our workshops to answer your questions, but please feel free from the beginning of the workshop to enter your questions in the chat window, and we will answer as many as possible at the end of the hour. Next slide. There's our website to view our past trainings. So hopefully since this is workshop 4, we had 2 other virtual trainings last year. So those recordings you can view on our website. Next slide. Okay, one of my favorite parts of every workshop, we try to make it a little bit fun for everyone. For those of you who are joining live today, if you attend the entire live presentation, you will be entered into a drawing for the chance to win one of 3 $25 gift cards. When you log on to the website or onto the webinar today, each individual participant is given a number. So we will throw all those numbers into a basket and randomly select 3 winners today at the end of the workshop. And by the end of today, take a look at your inbox as we will email all the winners. Next slide. For those of you who might be joining us for the very first time, welcome. And for those of you who might be joining us for the 2nd, 3rd, or even 4th time, welcome back. We are super excited to be launching today workshop number 4 of our Financial Empowerment Academy. Next slide. The Academy is one of our survivor empowerment programs here at Free to Thrive. We're really proud that we launched it last year in February, with really the goal being to provide empowerment, tips, tools, and especially support and skills to help you become financially empowered and independent. The best part is all the workshops are free and feature amazing speakers like some of the speakers we have today. Our first workshop was in February last year, just before COVID. So we had an incredible in-person workshop with over 14 participants and 20 volunteers. Since then, we have had 2 more virtual workshops, one in July and one in December. And the silver lining truly of COVID is the fact that we've been able to reach survivors and service providers across the country. And I'm really excited to share with you today that we have 6 different states participating in the workshop today. So again, thank you so much for joining us. As I mentioned before, we are honored to have some very special guest speakers today. Sorry, Sophie, next slide. Our first speaker will be Marissa Mowry, and she is, as I said, the finance staff attorney at Mental Health Advocacy Services in Los Angeles. Marissa has a wealth of knowledge, and I'm super excited for you to hear her presentation. With that, I will turn it over to Marissa.
Hi, good afternoon, Newly, good afternoon. I'm Marissa, thank you so much for having me. And I'll start off with, I was asked to share a quote or words of wisdom about finance that I appreciate. And the quote that I chose is that money is only a tool. It can take you wherever you wish, but it can't replace you as the driver. Yeah, so next slide, please. There I am. Go ahead, next slide. Thank you. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about credit generally and a little bit more about identity theft. We will sort of take a 10,000-foot view of the general credit portion, as prior presenters have spoken to this topic as well, and there are some really great presentations available at the links that Susie just talked about. So I would really encourage you, if you would like a more in-depth dive in that topic, to go back to those prior presentations. The other reason that we're going to take a 10,000-foot view is that a lot of situations are very fact dependent. Lawyers are famous for always responding, "It depends," to any question that we can be asked. And so, we'll invite you to maybe ask your specific questions, but we want to make sure we don't go too far down a rabbit hole that doesn't necessarily apply to everyone. So we'll be a little more general to start with. Next slide, please. So I work for Mental Health Advocacy Services. Just a little bit about us. We've been around since 1977, and we provide legal services to individuals who have mental health disabilities or who live with mental health difficulties generally. A person doesn't have to have a diagnosed mental health illness to avail themselves of our services. You can self-identify as a person who's in need of those services, and we're happy to assist in any of the number of programs that we have established in our organization. Next slide. A little bit of a disclaimer or housekeeping as we start off is that I just want to acknowledge that financial matters are issues that can make people feel really uncomfortable, and that's totally normal to feel anxious or afraid or feel like you're avoiding the situation. Even people who are very stable in their financial matters find this system very confusing and intimidating. And so if you're having those kinds of feelings about this, that is totally understandable, and it's a very normal response. And it's also very normal for folks not to want to part with their sensitive financial information, which can be necessary in these processes in order to get yourself the proper help and the proper feedback from advocates or attorneys who may be assisting you in these matters. But I also want to say generally that it's a really good thing to not want to part with one's sensitive financial information. And later on when we talk about identity theft, that'll be important as we discuss ways that you can protect yourself. Next slide. So let's start discussing, actually, sorry, I think I was supposed to launch the first poll question here. I believe. All right, so participants, if you wouldn't mind, we have this poll question: which of the following is a reason why a person may have a low credit score? So think back to prior presentations, maybe things that you've learned about, things you already know. The choices are: they have never had an open credit account, they failed to pay back a debt on time, they don't have a good variety of types of credit, or any of the above. So we'll give you a couple of seconds to think about what your response is. And then I'm not sure, go ahead and, yes, very good. You're recalling your prior training. These are all reasons why a person may have a low credit score. That's great, thank you. So I'll turn back to the presentation here. Going back to sort of a review of prior speakers, let's just talk for a second about what credit really is. And I think the best way to conceptualize this is to think about, if I were to ask you if I could borrow $500 from you, and I were a stranger, as I am, if you can think to yourself, what are some of the things that you might want to know about me before you would agree to lend me that money? You might want to know, do I have a job or a bank account? Do I have a way to pay you that money back? Have I ever borrowed money before and had to pay it back? Do I have people that I can give to you as references who can say, oh yeah, I'm an honest person and I'm the kind of person who will pay money back? Those might be some questions that you would have. And that sort of really in-depth inquiry is something that might be reasonable to do if it were just you and I having that exchange. But if I were running a big lending business, or I were a big bank, then I need a faster way to make that decision on a much larger scale. And that's where credit comes in. So the way that banks can take a look at what your credit or your ability to pay back loans are your credit report and your credit score. A credit report shows a really detailed history of your relatively recent credit accounts. It can also include personal information like your housing history, perhaps your employment history. And a credit score is like a one-glance summary of what all that information means if you're to condense it down to a number. So they look at your whole credit history and then they make a number out of it and assign you that number, and that's what your credit score is. And this altogether is supposed to be an objective measure of your credit worthiness or your ability to pay back loans. That should make it harder for people to discriminate against you when they're making lending and housing decisions and employment decisions. So what makes your credit score better or worse? Like the poll question that we just talked about. It's important to remember that credit scores are proprietary information. What does that mean? It means that only FICO, maybe you've heard of FICO or Advantage or whatever company is disclosing the credit score, only they know the secret formula for how they came up with that credit score. And so if you ever hear someone telling you, oh, if you don't do X, your credit score will fall by 20 points, it's not possible for anyone to know at that kind of exact description what an action will or won't do to your credit score. It's possible to speak generally, for example, to say, oh, if you file for bankruptcy, that will hurt your credit score, or if you pay back your loans on time, that will help your credit score. You can say that, but no one really knows, except for those companies, by how many points something will be affected. Next slide. Right. So what are some ways that you can know more information about your financial situation? Everyone has the right to look at their consumer credit report. And typically you have the right to request one every year from each of the main 3 credit reporting companies, which we'll discuss in a couple minutes. Right now, because of COVID and how some things are expanded and free, you can actually get your credit reports once a week for free through April of this year. It's possible that they may extend this as the crisis goes on, but as of right now, you can get them pretty much as frequently as you want. It's important to note that landlords and employers, other folks, use different kind of consumer reports when they're making their decisions about whether to extend an offer of housing to you or an offer of employment. So if someone ever comes back to you and says, no, you're not eligible for this housing because you have a poor financial situation, you can request from that housing provider, for example, whatever report it is that they used from whatever company they got it from. And if they can't provide you with the report or refuse to provide you with the report, as long as you can get the name of the company they use, you have a right to those reports also. You can also request that. So you have a right to your own information. Next slide. So the big 3 credit reporting agencies are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And the way that they work, you might recall from prior presentations, is that the individual accounts that you have, let's say you have an account with a bank and you have a credit card and you also have an open account with AT&T for your cell phone. You make monthly payments on each of those things, and those companies report to the credit reporting agency. So a credit reporting agency is just compiling all of that information and putting it into a report all together. They are not the ones who are specifically, looking after your reports themselves. Next slide. Is it possible for us to click the link? Beautiful. Okay. So this may look familiar. In prior presentations, you also saw something like this. I just want to run through it real quick to refresh everybody's memory. So this is an example of what a credit report would look like from Experian. Because these big 3 credit reporting agencies are different companies, they all look a little bit different, but the information they contain is about the same. You want to get all 3 of them because, as I said, they're different companies. So maybe one of them has all your information right, but another one has got something wrong. You want to make sure that they all kind of say the same thing. So what each of them will have is at the top, if you could just scroll down a little bit, at the top, it'll have, there you go, your personal information. You want to look through this, make sure you agree that all of that information is true. Sometimes if you have a common name, the companies will accidentally conflate or put together 2 people's credit reports. And so when we talk about identity theft, it may be possible that they're not fraudulent accounts, they're just accidentally mixed with someone else's account. So you want to check and make sure that all of the addresses look right and that it's really just referring to you and your information. Go ahead and scroll down some more. And then typically keep going to, where it says potentially negative items, perfect. Typically what the reports will do is they will list the negative accounts first. So that means any account that you are currently having a problem with. Maybe you're behind on the payments, or it's gone to collections or something like that. They'll list the negative ones first. Go ahead and scroll down some more to accounts in good standing. So this will list all of the accounts that you have open that are up to date and that you've been making regular payments on. So you want to look through on your credit report these accounts, and you want to make sure that you recognize all of them, that you agree that they're behind if it says that they're behind, and that they were open and closed at the times that you agree that they were open and closed at. Again, prior presentations addressed this more in detail, so I will refer you to those, and they talk about credit reports and reading them with a lot more detail. So those are really great. Okay, we can go back to the PowerPoint. Thanks, and next slide. All right, so again with the 10,000-foot view, but we're gonna look at a few different kinds of specific credit problems that people see come up fairly commonly, and what are some important things to know about each one, and what are some first steps that you can take. It's difficult to go through these in a lot of detail because everything is so fact specific. And because it's so fact specific, it's important to talk to a lawyer or an advocate about your specific scenario and your specific information. And this is the moment where I would like to bring in Brooke to discuss the service that Free to Thrive provides that's a little more tailored to everyone's specific needs.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that, Marissa, and thank you, Susie, who just mentioned my information earlier. I guess, like we said, I'm Brooke. I'm the case assistant here at Free to Thrive, and I'm assisting people with their personal budgeting. So as we previously discussed, if you want to become CEO of your own finances and you want to achieve your own personal financial goals, then you need a personal budget or some sort of budgeting or some sort of spending plan. So through Free to Thrive, we're offering one-on-one, judgment-free zone, personal budgeting opportunities and sessions to connect with me about your personal budgeting plan and building your own financial empowerment. So what should we recognize is that budgeting or spending is an empowerment tool, right? So through these one-on-one sessions, I'm here to work alongside you in determining your incoming and outgoing expenses and helping you track your expenses and outline what your financial goals are and help you create your own budget and or spending plan. So whatever you need, I'm here to work for you. So feel free to contact me via email or just reach out to me via call and we can set something up. Thank you. And now we'll return to the rest of the presentation.
Thanks, Brooke. Excellent. So the first specific scenario that we're going to address is what happens when lenders are harassing you. So if you have an account that is behind or there's something wrong with it, you haven't been making payments on it, lenders are allowed to contact you about that account and to remind you that you need to make payments, or let you know that they intend to take legal action. What they're not allowed to do is harangue you or harass you about that account. They can't call you 50 times at 3 o'clock in the morning. They can't be texting you 50 times a day. So there's a line in that communication. Regardless of whether they've crossed that line or not, if you just don't want to hear from lenders anymore about the debt, you can tell them to stop contacting you, and by law, they have to stop contacting you. If you need to tell them in writing, so you've got to get their address, and we have template letters that we can share with you if you'd like. They're very simple. Essentially, all you have to say is, you've been contacting me about this account, put the account number, and I don't want to hear from you about this again. And then you mail it to them and they should stop contacting you. And if they don't, then you actually have a federal claim of action against them if that's something that you would like to pursue. There is an exception, of course, as with most things in the law, if the lenders need to communicate with you about some sort of legal step that they're taking. then they can, if they intend to, for example, sue you on the debt, if they're going to bring a lawsuit in debt collection matter, then they have to send you a summons and complaint. They have to send you court documents. So that's something that they can do. In addition, you can tell lenders if you are what we call judgment proof or collections proof. And what that means is that you are a person who, even if they did sue you in court, and even if they did win, for example, and the court says, yeah, you owe them $10,000 or whatever, you don't have to pay them. So that's what judgment or collections proof means. It means that if you are a person who has very low income, or if you have a person whose income is protected, for example, you receive Social Security income or disability, that's what your 100% of your income is, they can't take that from you. Similarly, if your bank account is below a certain amount of money, they can't take money from your bank account. Wage garnishment is something that happens, and if you earn less than a certain amount of money, they can't garnish your wages. So if that applies to you, then you can likewise tell a creditor, listen, I'm judgment proof, so in addition to stopping contacting me about this, you should know that if you move forward legally, you're probably not going to get paid. It might not be worth your while. Which brings us to the next slide. If you've moved past just the point where a creditor is calling you and saying, look, you need to pay, and you've arrived at the point when you've actually been sued on the debt in court, there's a few things to keep in mind. The first is that it's very important for you to open your mail and to listen to your voicemails. You don't have to answer your phone every time somebody calls you, but it's important to at least try and listen to the voicemails if you can. And that way you can be very aware of deadlines in your case. I understand that this can be really intimidating for people. I've had many clients, more than half of my clients, I would say, at some point during our representation, they would say, yes, I did get a letter or a phone call about this, and I didn't open it because I knew what it was about and I just couldn't deal with it. And that is totally fine. That is always your choice. And I just want to reinforce at this point that like everything in this scenario, you always have the option to do nothing. And if that's what's best for you in your situation, you're an expert in your own life. If not engaging with your financial legal issue at this point is what's best for you, then you don't have to do it. That being said, it may affect what kinds of legal options are available to you. But I have worked with clients who have told me, look, I'm experiencing, I work with folks with mental health difficulties. And I've had a few folks say, this can't be my priority right now. It's negatively affecting my mental health, such as I can't engage. And then we'll figure out the second best option. So we're all here for you to try and help you figure out what is the best way for you to make the best decisions for you. Being CEO of your own life and your own finances means that you call the shots. And so just want to reinforce that. I do want to say, though, that I always encourage people, the best approach is generally to answer and to participate in the legal process. Most creditors, when they sue someone in court, they're literally banking on the fact that you won't respond to a lawsuit. They just assume that people are going to assume that they'll lose, and then they just don't show up in court and answer. And this would result in a default judgment against you. But sometimes if you show up and engage, then they're required to do kind of a cost-benefit analysis. If you only owe them $1,000, is it worth their money to pay their lawyers to go into court in order to collect that amount of money? So it's always better to participate and at least get them thinking about what it is that they want. You can also try to negotiate with the lender or with their attorneys. It's possible you could reach a settlement with them for a payment plan or for a smaller lump sum. And as always, try and talk to an attorney or an advocate if you can. Next slide. Okay. What happens if your credit report is wrong? You've gone through the credit report, you've looked at it critically, and you've realized that there's something on there that should not be on there. The first thing you want to ask is, what about it is wrong? Because credit reporting agencies, while they are required to listen to you when you dispute something on the report, they're only required to fix things that are factually wrong and not legally wrong. Let me give you a quick example. Right now in California, we still have an eviction moratorium during COVID. It means you can't be evicted from your housing because of non-payment during this emergency. Let's say a person was wrongfully evicted during COVID. They should not have been evicted for non-payment, but they were. And let's say that eviction shows up on their consumer report. Even though that person should not have been evicted, they actually were. So it is factually correct that they were evicted, even though it legally should not have happened. Therefore, you need to resolve the underlying legal problem before you can go to the credit reporting agency and say, hey, you got to take this off my report, it's wrong, which is one of the reasons why this process can take so long. The good news is that when you can dispute the credit report, the agency is required by federal law to investigate and to respond to your dispute. And they generally do this. They have 30 days to do it. Things are backed up because of COVID. Recently, I had someone, it was in 45 days, so it's really not all that bad. They are required to respond. Next slide. Many folks end up with large medical bills, and there are a couple of notes that I want to hit on this. First, in the state of California, hospitals are required to offer you what's called charity care. It's basically financial aid to help with certain medical bills. If they did not do this and now they're sending you a bill, you can request a charity care application from them. The applications are pretty easy to fill out. They just ask you basic information about your current financial situation, not complicated information, but just stuff like what's your average monthly income and are you receiving any public benefits? And then they'll just ask you information that would appear on the hospital bill. What was your medical ID number, for example, and what were the dates of your care? Hospitals also are required to have what's called a charge master on staff. And that's a person whose job it is to keep track of how much every single procedure in the hospital costs. That's the official cost of everything. And that was made to eliminate the practice of charging people with certain kinds of health insurance one price and other people with different kinds of health insurance a different price. And you can request an itemized bill from a hospital. So if you think that the bill is way higher than it should be, which they almost always are, you can request an itemized bill and take a look at everything that they're charging you for and make sure that every procedure is a procedure you actually received and every item that's on the bill is something that you actually got. Last point here is that medical debt is special and it comes with its own set of protections in the consumer world. So for example, it can't be reported on your credit report as debt until much farther down the line. The system gives you a lot more time to resolve the debt or the problem before they will sort of nail you for it on the credit report. If you find yourself with a large medical bill, my advice would be to not use credit cards or short-term loans to pay off that medical debt, because those protections around medical debt will disappear as soon as you convert it to something else. So it's much better, financially speaking, to have a large medical bill that is still a healthcare bill than to charge it off. And now you just have general credit card debt that doesn't have those same protections. All right, I think that we have another poll question here. All right. So now we're going to turn our attention to the topic at hand, which is identity theft. And our first identity theft question is, does identity theft only have to do with stealing money or credit? Yes, no, or I don't know. All right. No, you guys are so smart. Well done. That's correct. Identity theft, as we'll discuss, is not only to do with money, which is a great thing to remember as we're trying to protect ourselves. Next slide. I'm going to say again, this is a very fact-specific determination, but the ways that people tend to recognize identity theft are pretty I don't know, they're very broad and they're varied. But generally speaking, some people know or are aware that another person may have used their identity to do something, that they may have used their identity to commit tax fraud or the identity of their child, for example, or someone may know that another person, when they were arrested, gave your name instead of their name. Sometimes these things are known already, but other times it might not come up until a person tries to do something in their life and then they're stopped from doing it because of an issue that they didn't know about. For example, you may see something on your credit report that you were not aware that happened. Maybe you apply for housing and someone says, you have bad credit, we can't extend this offer of housing to you, and you're surprised by that. Or you apply for a job and they mention you have something in your criminal history that you weren't aware of. Or a bank may not open a bank account for you because, or extend you a loan for whatever reason. Occasionally it's a surprise. And what we want to do by having good like financial hygiene and checking your credit as regularly as possible and confronting these issues when they come up is to make sure that you don't have any bad surprises in this arena. Next slide. All right, so if you can take a look in the chat box, we'd like to know what are some ways that you know of already that you can protect your identity online. What are some things you can do to protect yourself? Yeah. So some of the answers we're getting for, I think someone had joined by phone. So we have fraud alert, never send your social security number in an email or post it anywhere. Don't share your birthday, change your passwords often. In addition to change your passwords often, don't use the same password for every website. Have two-step authentication on every account possible. Yes. Great. Yeah. I mean, and some of these are, keep yourself close, honey, period. Yes. Exactly. I mean, but that's a great philosophy to have, honestly, that you want to be like naturally suspicious of anyone who is trying to get your personal information from you on the internet. And, when I was growing up, even before I got into law or into finance, when I was a kid, my mom would always tell me, if you should always be reaching out to someone else and giving them your information. No one should ever be contacting you, calling you and saying, hey, I need your social security number. And she always told me, if that ever happens, you should tell that person, I want to make sure that you are who you really say you are. I'm going to hang up and call the organization you say you're calling from and ask if they actually want this information. So I think a certain level of like natural suspicion, especially on the internet, is really important. Some credit cards let you use a temporary digital number. Yeah, credit cards are really tricky too, because I don't know about you folks, but I find that if I use a web browser, it wants to automatically populate my credit card information into like anytime I need to order something or buy something. And so there's ways to disable that. If you're a person who's using a public computer, like in a library, or you're using a like Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or something, you want to make sure you sign out of everything when you're done. You just want to make sure that you're always give the minimum amount of information online that is necessary. Sometimes you fill out forms and they have like a little asterisk, this is required, but if it's not required, it's always best to keep your personal information personal when you can. Those are all really good responses. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. All right, I know this looks like the same slide, but it is not. In this question, we want to know, what are some things you can do to protect your identity offline, so not on the internet? You can go ahead and put that in the chat box as well. I'll give everybody a minute. This one's yes, beautiful. Shred sensitive documents. Lock your mailbox. Yes, that's a good one. Or at least check it very frequently, empty it, so folks don't know that you will leave stuff kind of sitting around. Lock your mailbox. Yeah, make sure people aren't reading things over your shoulders. Again, with phone calls, you want to make sure that that people can't overhear you when you're talking about sensitive personal information. Some of the things are lock sensitive documents in your home. Yeah. Again, be naturally suspicious and naturally protective of your information. If you get letters in the mail that seem suspicious, or people maybe come to your house, which is less, sort of like, what do you call it? Like soliciting. People come to your house. You just want to be like very suspicious of who is from where. Don't write down your credit card numbers and give them to other people if you can help it. I've had my identity stolen through like a card reader at the gas station. And there are certain things that there's just, it comes up in a myriad of ways, so many ways that it's really difficult to know when it's going to happen. And some of the things are really hard to get around. We live in a society that uses less cash, and some people use very, very little cash. And so it's kind of hard to get around this, and you just have to be as protective of that information as possible. Let's go ahead to the next slide, and we'll continue discussing these as they come up. There are many kinds of identity theft, and really, as we said in the first question, it's not just about money, it's not just about debt or finance. It's not just someone stealing your social security number or your credit card information. Really, it can happen anytime someone uses your personal information without your permission to pretend to be you, usually for some sort of gain or to get something. But it doesn't just have to be about money, and it can be a near infinite number of ways. So some types of identity theft are financial or account takeover. So someone kind of locks you out. If you don't protect your password, someone can kind of hack your account and lock you out. Social security number fraud, either somebody uses it in their own employment, giving your social security number as theirs when they seek employment, or maybe using it to file taxes. Medical identity theft, maybe somebody uses your insurance information to obtain medical care, and then you get one of those large medical bills we talked about and it wasn't you. Someone may steal the identity of a child, claiming them perhaps as a dependent, or taking out loans in their name, or making financial transactions, getting financial products in the child's name. Other types of identity theft are identity theft of seniors in particular, who are quite vulnerable when other people are maybe managing their finances. Synthetic identity theft, which is when a thief combines your real information with made up information that they're coming up with, and they've created this whole new like persona on the internet that is not really you, but it's sort of co-opting your information in order to make it seem legitimate. Criminal ID theft, which I had touched on before, when a different person who is not you is arrested and they give your name and personal information, and then you have a criminal record even though you had not committed that actual offense. And estate identity theft, which is when after a person passes away, their open accounts, if their family doesn't take care of them, are ripe for ID theft and fraud as well. But this comes up in so many ways. It may have happened to you or someone that you know in a way that none of us have ever heard of before. It's really varied. Next slide. Okay, so The good news about identity theft is that starting your claim, the very first steps that you can take are not complicated. And almost none of the things that I have talked about so far, asking for a charity care application, disputing your credit report, sending a do not contact letter to a creditor, initiating a claim in this way, none of these things require attorney assistance. If you need attorney assistance, folks like myself exist to help you out, but you don't have to have a lawyer to do these things yourself. So initiating a claim for identity theft. I heard someone when I was learning about this say in passing, and I thought it was the best advice, in ID theft cases, you want to complain everywhere you can as soon as you can. The sooner you start telling everyone that you had an identity theft issue, the more likely it is that you will be able to either recoup your money, get it off your credit report, or at the very least, you won't be held liable or responsible for whatever it is that person did. I'll give you a quick example. A couple of months ago, I got an email confirmation from Best Buy that I could go pick up my very new, very expensive camera from their Burbank location within the hour. And I checked my credit card statement, and sure enough, someone had spent like $1,500 on a camera at Best Buy. And so I immediately called the credit card company and told them that this had happened. And they put a fraud alert on the account and closed the credit card and then sent me a new one. And I also called Best Buy to tell them to cancel the order. So I thought everyone who had touched that situation, I made sure that I reached out to them and told them what had happened, and it was handled. They took care of it. I caught it on the front end. As with most things, the sooner you complain, the easier it is to get it worked out. You can contact the credit agencies or your credit card company and ask them to put a fraud alert on your account or a freeze on your account. You can also report the identity theft to the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. And the little infographic off to the right there on the slide, this is from identitytheft.gov. It's one of the most user-friendly government websites I've ever seen. And you can go in and talk about what kind of identity theft you've suffered and basically what happened. And they will give you very clear next steps about this is the agency you need to contact, this is what we advise that you do, and here are the links and the forms to do that. So it's a very helpful website and a great resource. Another thing that you may want to consider doing, or that you should consider doing, is filing a police report. And I know that a lot of folks are justifiably hesitant to engage with law enforcement. The reality of the identity theft situation is that most agencies will require a police report in order to move forward with your claim. So if you have experienced healthcare identity theft, your insurer is probably going to require a police report before they will work with you on reversing those charges. Likewise, a credit reporting agency, one of those big three, they're going to require a police report in order to get that taken off your credit report. So it's something that I just kind of want you to have in the back of your mind as on that list of things that you should probably do right up front, because they will need that. Next slide. All right. So there's a strong interplay. Based on what we've learned so far, you probably have already figured this out, that there's a big interplay between identity theft and fixing a credit report. So, or fixing how that identity theft is going to impact your credit. As we said before, credit reporting agencies only correct factual errors. So if somebody actually opened an account in your name, then there is an account open in your name that's not factually incorrect. That person shouldn't have done that. Your identity was stolen. So you have to resolve that underlying problem before the credit reporting agency or the bank or whoever will make an accommodation for you or take the account off your report. And so those underlying things need to be resolved before challenging the effect on your credit. Next slide. And so that brings us to the all-important question of, well, how long is it going to take for me to have my credit fixed? And the true lawyer that I am, my answer is that depends. And it depends because of what we just said, which is that any of the reasons why you have a problem with your credit or your criminal history or your housing history that is not accurate to what actually happened, or maybe happened under duress or without your knowledge, those issues have to be resolved before you can correct the record. So it really depends from person to person, and I wish that I had a more concrete way to describe that, but you know, it's very methodical. So what we've got to do is figure out what are the different types of identity theft you may have suffered, what are the ways that we can address those individual and sometimes very different legal problems. And then after that, the process of getting it fixed with your credit reporting agency should be much easier. So once you have a court order, for example, that has vacated your criminal history, it's much easier to go back to a reporting agency that's reporting to employers and saying, look, I have this order that says that you need to take these charges or these convictions off of my record so that I can apply for jobs and not have them come up. So it's usually a multi-step process. But next slide. I think that's everything that I have for my segment. So thanks very much, and I'll hand it back over to Susie to introduce the rest of the folks. Oh, Susie, you're muted.
Sorry, everyone. Thank you so much, Marissa. As always with these workshops, just so much incredible information, and maybe things that we know, but great reminders. And I think everything that Marissa shared today was extremely helpful. And thank you to Brooke also for giving you a little hint about our personal budgeting assistance, and a reminder that at the end of the workshop, they'll be back to answer questions, or available to answer your questions as well. So feel free from this point on to answer any questions into the Q&A chat, and we will try to answer all of those at the end of the hour. Super excited now to introduce to you Marjorie and Dion, who will continue this really, really great discussion with more insight, tips, and advice. Dion and Marjorie, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Susie. Good job, Marissa. Raise your hand if some of the information that you received was new, but most importantly, that it was encouraging to you. Raise your hands. Awesome, awesome. Well, I am super, super excited to be having a panel discussion with Marjorie Saylor, who is a survivor and who is also thriving. We are excited about what she's going to share with us today. Hi, Akia. I'm super excited about what she's going to share with us today about helping you be CEO of your finances, not my finances or someone else's, but your finances. And today, we are super excited that Margie has agreed to be open and honest and share some of the myths, mysteries, and mindset about becoming financially stable. Are you ready, Marjorie?
I'm ready.
Yay! So today, Marissa shared some amazing information with regards to identity theft, credit, debt, and budgeting. And all of this was important for legacy building, which you have done. First, we will go ahead and ask you, as CEO, as president, please share with us some background information just about you.
Just about me,
Yes.
well, okay, so backtracking way back, how I ended up getting into being vulnerable to exploitation was running away from home at 15. A lot of early childhood abuse and domestic violence in the home prior. But I was on the streets and looking for work and was labor trafficked by a couple different organizations or companies. By the time I was 18, I was running a moving company, booking moving appointments and things like that under the table, so not legit, not a legit job. And then I ended up by the 21 into commercial sexual exploitation through the strip clubs, and then sex trafficked briefly, and then later labor trafficked again by my last abuser. And coming out of that, my daughter was the motivation to get me out of that life. She broke me out of my state of hopelessness and helplessness. And about a year after my freedom, I dove right into school. I went back to college. I had no idea what to do with my life. My credit was shot. I had no real job history under the table. So I figured, okay, I'm going to go back to school. That was the only thing I could think of to do. And it was the best thing I did for myself. A year into that, actually that first year back in school, I started getting involved in advocacy work and wanting to make the world a better place for my daughter. And then it just turned into one thing to another. And I started working directly with other survivors a year after that. And then 2017, when I graduated, I started my own program, the Well Path. And so we provide emergency response, emergency shelter through hotels and other emergent needs that would keep someone from going back to that lifestyle. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I do a lot of legislative work too. It's my life.
Thank you so much for generously sharing. I have the Well Path is definitely one of the community partners for Free to Thrive, and we have been encouraged by how you have been supportive to survivors of Free to Thrive, but survivors in our community as a whole. So we're talking about Financial Empowerment Academy, and specifically regarding identity theft, credit, debt, and budgeting. So I have some empowering words that I'm going to put out there, and I want you to share what you think about that with being financially stable. Transforming.
Transforming.
That was a deep sigh right then.
Yes, it's a process. It took a lot of time to fully transform, and it's still in progress.
Yes.
You know, what, for me, 8 years out, almost 8 years out, and I'm still a work in progress. There are still things that come up, and I'm like, wait a minute, I thought that was it. I thought that was all I needed to take my life back. Wait, that's one more step.
Right.
So, but yes, time and a lot of work for sure, but worth it. Wellness, self-care. Definitely is the first thing that comes to my mind with that, self-care, and part of that is taking responsibility for your finances.
Awesome. Worthy.
I love this one. Definitely worth taking the time to reinvest in yourself and recreate.
Thriving.
And thriving, I think that's my favorite. It's where I feel like I'm at now. It's taken a lot of time to get to that point, but we can be thriving, even still having things that we need to take care of, you know, things, because it's, like I said, it takes time for a lot of this stuff to be completed, to be finished. But you can be thriving in it.
Good job, Marjorie. So Marissa's financial words of wisdom: money is only a tool. Can be an empowerment tool, but it's really how you use money that really can be challenging. It can be controlling for our financial situation, but it starts with emotional and understanding, right? She covered the basics. how would you share how identity, and we're talking about identity theft, which is the subject of our webinar today. How would you say that your identity was used, stolen, or changed to suit the exploitation that you experienced?
Yeah, so to backtrack a little bit too, I didn't have the best credit history prior to my exploitation. Like I said, I ran away from home at 15, had no idea
Right.
whatsoever about credit or what that was. And there were a couple times when I can't even remember what it was, some small thing, some infomercial on TV that I paid like a small portion for it, and then I owed some more money, and then I ended up in a situation where I didn't have money to pay for it, let it go, didn't care about it, you know, a couple more things like that, little teeny things, but it really affected my credit, and I had no good credit. There was nothing, it was all negative, right? And so and then moving on now I'm with my last abuser, which he damaged my credit the worst. He used me so he made me write bad checks to get money out of my bank account. So I had created accounts with banks and blacklisted by a lot of banks. I was also, so cell phones. He had me open up a cell phone account under every single carrier within a week. And I'm thinking, why do you need all these phones? You know, we just need one. Let's just get one. But no, he used me to do that, and he never paid for any of it after a couple months. And so it's on my credit report now. I have even more negative stuff on my report. And so coming out of that, still didn't have a lot of education on credit, how to fix my credit, how to even go about justifying what had been done. So I took the long route and I just let it fall off. Some of these things I paid for what I could, and then other things I just let fall off. Because after 7 years, and it actually took a lot longer than that. After 7 years, technically things are supposed to fall off, but which I don't suggest to do. If it's a legitimate debt that you owe, you want to take care of it. But
so
go ahead.
So we talk about the mysteries and mindset. How did that change your mindset? Because I would say a myth is that it would fall off in 7 years, right? The mystery wasn't that debt was there or how it got there, but how did your mindset change when it came to your credit and the debt that had accumulated as a result of your exploitation?
Yeah, I thought that I would never, I would never have good credit. I thought I'd never get out of the hole. It just seemed like some other organization would take over the debt and it would just repost. And so, yeah, I felt like I was stuck. And it's another thing too that kind of kept me in exploitation longer is because I didn't have means on my own and my credit was shot. So yeah, it definitely affected my mindset of me even being able to think that I could get anything better.
I'd like to ask a question. So one comment was made that a person looked at their body as credit. Was that ever your experience?
So when yes, that's a good point. You are a moneymaker. Like that's when you're in commercial sexual exploitation or being sex trafficked, you are looked at as a product. You feel like a product. You take on that identity, and yeah, for a very long time. And it's funny too. It's not funny, but it's interesting. That's a better word for it. Is I sometimes catch myself falling back into that mindset. I'm like, yeah, good, you know, like, but and I have to catch myself and snap out of that mindset.
That mindset.
my mind, what I do is worth so much more. It's not, yeah.
Because you are worthy.
Correct.
Awesome. Awesome. So we know empowerment is the process of becoming stronger and more confident. And being financially stable really helps. How did that change your being vulnerable to being a situation where you're no longer financially stable?
So I'm sorry, repeat the question. Being financially stable or not?
Being financially stable. How did so it's a process
Mhm.
during trying to get your finances stable. So how did your mindset change to where your experiences, your circumstances, your hopes and your dreams was no longer just the driving factor, such
Yeah.
as setting the goals for
Yeah.
changing you from being vulnerable to focusing on becoming financial stable?
Right. Okay. So I understand.
Okay.
So coming out of that first year, coming out of my last situation of exploitation, I had snapped out of that mindset of that state of hopelessness and helplessness, like I mentioned before. But there were still challenges. I
Right.
got on welfare right away.
Mhm.
Took me about a year. Oh my gosh, I was at food banks twice a week. I
Mhm.
was going to pregnancy resource centers for diapers and formula for my baby. I I utilized every free resource that I could find.
Mhm.
And then when I signed up for school about a year later, uh, yeah, because it was about a year I've been doing this. And I was fortunate I had housing available through one of my family members. Otherwise, I would have been on the street in my car, you know, I don't know. So that was a help for me too.
Mhm.
But aside from that, I just hit every free resource I could. And it was a pride thing too, because I wanted to
Right.
do it on my own. I didn't
Yeah.
want any more help than I needed from my family because there were
Mhm.
still issues there, still bad blood.
Right.
And then when I signed up for school, that's when things started to really change for me in my mind. And I started applying for grants and I started
Mhm.
our scholarships and financial aid, and that got me through. And then I was employed, and that helped me a little more. And all of this is boosting my self-esteem, my
Yes.
self-worth, um,
Yes.
and nothing was going to stop me from reaching my dream. It took time for the credit to be worked out, and
Right.
I had made some mistakes in that too, and I can share. So once my credit started to get good, I
Mhm.
stopped looking at it for a long time, and then I finally looked at it, like, oh my gosh, it's good. And because I opened up a prepaid credit account. It's like
Mhm.
dollars for a prepaid credit card, and I
Right.
was only charging $20 a month on it, and I was paying it off completely every month. And that really helped jump my score up. Within
Right.
probably a year, 6 months to a
Mhm.
year, my score increased like, oh, it was
Right.
drastic change. So I was in good credit. Um, and so I started applying for, now at this point, I'm excited. I'm like, I want to even make this even better. How can I do it? And so I got advice from a real estate broker because my goal in the future is to buy my own home.
Right.
So opening up 3 to 4 to 5 credit accounts was suggested. And so I did that because they look at um, how many accounts are open, how you're doing on those accounts. Are you
Mhm.
are you under the 30% threshold? And I kept it under 7%
Mhm.
credit utilization.
Mhm.
Just just paid just bought bare minimum stuff once a month with each account and then paid it off completely every month. And I still do that. But then I got kind of too excited, and I ended up having a procedure done, a medical procedure, and I applied for care credit for
Mhm.
that procedure to be paid and financed through care credit, which is fine to do. But I didn't understand how that would also affect my credit negatively.
Mhm. Mhm.
So because it was utilizing the whole amount for the surgery, it knocked my score back almost 70 points because I was at credit limit on just that one account. And I had
Right.
this outstanding credit on everything else. But yeah, so that was another lesson learned. So
Right. But it's all part of the journey, right?
mhm,
Of setting goals, financial goals, budgeting, saving, right? And then the
mhm.
tools, as we wrap up, I want you to share one of, as Marissa stated, money is only a tool. It will take you wherever you wish to go, but will not replace you as a driver, which means that you have to set a goal and you have to put some steps in place. And she shared some information with regards to identity theft, with regards to credit, debt, and then Brooke shared about budgeting. What would you say would be a tool for you, or that you can share with survivors that are joining us today, of taking action in spite of the challenges that you faced?
I'm not really sure how to put into words a specific tool. I think it was just for me more of a mindset. And I
Mm-hmm.
had to determine that no matter what, I was going to get to where I needed to be, even though I couldn't see it at
Right.
the time. This
Mm-hmm.
is where I wanted to be. So I would focus on areas that I could control. And
Awesome.
some of that was, for me, shopping is therapy. I'm
Right.
not gonna lie. I love to shop, but I had to limit myself.
Right.
And so sometimes I would just go into a store and I would window shop and I would try things on and then I would
Yeah.
put it all back.
And
I
this was the way
really
in
used it.
which, so this was part of your journey of
Mhm,
getting to a place of thriving and
mm,
focusing on becoming financially stable. Thank you
yeah.
so much, Marjorie, for sharing today. We are so grateful for you being open and honest about your journey from being vulnerable to becoming financially stable. And I believe I am to turn it over to Susie now for her to open it up for questions and answers. Thank you, Marjorie.
Susie, you're muted.
It's my mute day today. Sorry, everyone. Wow, just so much more amazing information. Thank you, Marjorie, for sharing. Dion, for your incredible wisdom, as always. I hope a lot of you out there got some great takeaways from listening to their discussion as well. But now we are at our question and answer period. I know we're coming up about, to 1:15, but if there's any questions, we're happy to quickly answer those. And then we just have a few more reminders before we close out the workshop today. So if anyone has a question that you would like to ask any of the speakers today, you can feel free right now to enter it into the chat or the Q&A. We'll wait just a couple minutes to see if anyone. Oh, thank you, Akia. Thank you so much, everyone, for engaging in the chat. It's been incredible. Well, right now, not looking like we have any specific questions, but keep in mind that we will be giving the information about all of our speakers later today, their contact info, so you can reach out to them individually if you would like. Next slide. If you are interested in getting a completion certificate for this workshop, you can reach out to Sophie. You can see her email right there, and we will send you a completion certificate for this particular workshop. If you happen to attend any of the previous workshops and maybe missed getting one, feel free to also ask about that workshop, and we're happy to do that as well. Next slide. All right, everyone, this is your reminder for all of you. And I have to say, I'm so grateful, everyone. I mean, we started with our full registration list today, and everyone stayed on for the entire workshop. So I'm extremely grateful, as I know this is a busy day for lots of people with work and other things going on. But if you stayed with us the whole time, then we will be doing the drawing just shortly after the workshop. So stay tuned to your inbox, and we will notify the winners of the $25 gift cards. Next slide. Our next workshop, we don't have a confirmed date yet, but we are looking to March for the next one. We will also be confirming the topic in the next few weeks. So stay tuned to both our website. So freetothrive.org, you can go to our Financial Empowerment Academy page, and you can always get updated information on that page about upcoming workshops and other programs and services that are offered through Free to Thrive. But you also, by attending today, you will also get email reminders about upcoming workshops. So you definitely won't miss getting notified about the workshop, and we hope to plan that within the next couple of weeks. Next slide, please. There's the website. Sorry about that. For future workshops, go to the website and that address. Next slide, so. Again, if you would like help with your personal budgeting and you are a client of Free to Thrive, please reach out to Brooke, and she can assist you with that. If you aren't a client and you still are interested in this type of support, Brooke will be happy to look for resources for you in your local area. Next slide. Again, any questions, comments, feedback, we're grateful for all of the above. Here's everyone that was on the workshop today and their contact information. Please keep in mind that you will receive a recording of the workshop today. So all of that great information will be at your fingertips once it arrives in your inbox. You will also receive the PowerPoint that includes all of this contact info as well, if you don't have a chance to jot it down right now. Next slide. And that will do it. Just a couple minutes over time. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for spending this hour and 15 minutes with us today. We really hope you gained some incredible information, knowledge, and tools that will empower you to take the next steps, to put it into action, to help you become CEO of your finances, and so much more. Have a great day, everyone, and a great rest of your week, and we look forward to seeing you again in March.